So, and what do you think about the report that thinks that staff isn't equipped?
I think that's true across all of our safety functions. The independent review panel who looked at the CPUC's gas safety programs after the San Bruno explosion made it very clear. I think that we have begun to address that question of a safety culture. We've begun to start bulking up. We've begun to set up tracking systems to make sure we're doing a better job of checking things regularly. But I think we have a long ways to go.
Fair enough.
Like everything else, some of these things are going to take time. 20 years of erosion in our safety program. I wish I could do it faster. We're getting safer, but I'm not happy yet.
Thank you. Commissioner Randolph, oil by rail is a very big concern for me. The city of Pomona, which is in my district, accepts over 100 trains per day of oil. How can I assure the residents that live there that they don't have to worry and that they are safe?
So it's funny because as President Picker was just talking, I almost interrupted and said, one of our sort of shining safety examples is our rail safety program. And the proactive way that our rail safety folks took a look at the oil by rail issue coming up, this was before it really got a lot of attention. They saw some references to it in the press. They sort of looked at the map of the state and said, where are these trains going to come? And what are some of the issues that are going to come? Are we going to be seeing these trains in Dunsmuir? And they immediately engaged, worked on making comments and working with federal agencies, coordinated with OES, with OSPR, the Oil Spill Safety and Response. I can never remember the exact acronym in the Department of Fish and Wildlife. And really took a leadership role in making sure that the state had a solid, coordinated response in dealing with oil by rail. And so I think it is a good example of the PUC being proactive and protecting the safety of California citizens.
That's great. That's very good to hear. Thank you. President Picker, a July 1 commission decision in the gas safety rulemaking contains an unprecedented provision allowing some types of gas pipeline leaks to go unrepaired for an indefinite period of time, so long as the gas leaks are vented into the atmosphere. Given that the legislature passed and the governor signed 2 bills, one in 2011 and one last year, establishing state policy requiring the timely repair of gas leaks due to their climate change impacts and life safety risks, can you explain how allowing gas leaks to go unrepaired because they are vented into the atmosphere is in compliance with that law?
This is, I think, one of the issues where we have not set overarching direction, but we have many proceedings moving in the same direction. So at the same time that we had this proceeding grinding to a close after a couple of years, we had already opened the proceeding that would actually adopt new regs that would be consistent with SB 1371. So at that point, we'd taken a year and a half of testimony on the regs. I inherited this proceeding. And so rather than reopen that, go for new testimony, we made the tactical decision that we would actually focus on that. And there's actually language that specifically says that about those Class 3 leaks, that we recognize that this is a policy that conflicts with state legislation, but it will specifically deal with this when we open conversation around this new proceeding.
So it will be fixed?
It will be fixed.
Great, thank you. The PUC has amazing jurisdiction over various industries. This is for either one of you. One of those industries is the TNCs, Uber, Lyft, and those car industries. What are your thoughts on how we properly regulate that industry, making sure that public safety is taken into consideration, consumer protections, and actually the workers themselves, the drivers?
That would be my proceeding. We are currently undergoing phase 2 in that proceeding, and we are taking a look at a variety of issues around public safety and consumer protection. Our primary goal for this next phase of the proceeding is to ensure that we have the right rules in place to allow for the most effective enforcement and implementation of our program, to make sure we have the right rules around trade dress and how cars are identified on the road as TNCs, around issues implementing the insurance requirements that were recently passed by the legislation to ensure that companies and drivers are following those rules, and frankly, dealing with a changing industry. For instance, there are new services that focus on transporting unaccompanied minors. And we have existing decisions that apply to bus companies that will transport unaccompanied minors on field trips and the like, and ensuring that the safety protections that we have for those companies also are applying to the TNCs to ensure that unaccompanied minors are safe when they are traveling, and looking at, what are some additional safety measures we might need to ensure the protection. So it is an ongoing proceeding, and I am sure that new issues will come up as they seem to on a monthly basis in that industry.
Well, thank you very much for your attention to that, and we don't ever want to inhibit new and creative business, but we do want to make sure it's properly regulated for everyone. So in closing, President Picker, I just want to thank you personally for coming to visit my district, specifically Ontario and Archibald Ranch, and to see the really kind of atrocious situation there with the power lines and residents living within literally a couple feet of those power lines. I know it's an ongoing discussion, and I look forward to working with you on that. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Kanye-Leva. I'm going to go to our Vice Chair, Ms. Fuller.
Welcome. Well, here we are again, and you aren't old and stooped over like I thought you'd be, Mr. Picker, from having taken on close to a year of this. So we congratulate you for survival of the fittest, because it's a pretty tough place to be, and you've done a good job sitting there, and here you are still willing to talk to us again and try to persevere. So I'm going to start with Leanne, or Commissioner Randolph. How's that? And Commissioner Randolph, have you heard of SB 1090 by Jean Fuller?
I have to admit I'm bad with numbers, so just...
That's fine. I'm bad with numbers too. So it's the time of use bill that requires a study that would help inland areas know what their bill is going to be like beforehand, hopefully, and that all my wonderful colleagues and legislator persevered with me and helped me pass.
Yes.
And we are eagerly awaiting to see it implemented. So we'll let Commissioner Picker talk about it next, but what is your impression about why that hasn't been implemented?
Well, in our residential rate reform proceeding, we had to evaluate the rate design, evaluate the tiers, and ensure that all of the users had a fair set of electric rates. And we determined that one of the goals of that proceeding was to analyze the question of time of use rates and what the effect of those would be. And that decision set in motion the extensive pilot programs that utilities are responsible to implement, with a goal of understanding what the effect of time of use rates would be, and how it would affect different users in different parts of the state. And as a I've lived in an inland area for the last 9 years, just recently moved to a coastal area. I recognize that the electricity usage in an inland area is very different. The volume is very different, and it's not a function of inefficiency or lack of concern about usage. It is a function of climate, and it's something that needs to be taken into consideration in a rate design. And so our intention is to carefully monitor the utilities in their implementation of the pilot programs and to ensure that they're collecting the right data and ensuring that the correct analysis is done. Data is critical because there are a lot of assumptions about how time of use would function, what the right window is for time of use. And without data, it's going to be difficult to make those decisions. So it's our responsibility as a commission to carefully monitor those pilot programs and make sure that the utilities are collecting the correct data and so we can analyze it.
And before you came, and before Commissioner Picker came, one of the problems was there was very little two-way communication between regular people and CPUC. And there were a lot of programs, new programs, the legislature didn't authorize, that were authorized by the CPUC. And so for us, that made a very large problem. Programs that we didn't authorize showed up in our districts, often badly run or badly timed, or the demonstration projects, especially when I think of the meter project starting in August of Bakersfield in 108 weather, with people who didn't want a meter, like didn't want to be the test group, caused us months and months and months and months of problems, and made that program a failure in my area because of the rollout. So it seemed like just a little bit of public interaction, a little bit of public engagement, a little bit of public transparency could have avoided a lot of cost, and a lot of frustration, and a lot of failed programs. So back to my question, the whole reason why we did this bill together, and obviously we did this bill together because I couldn't have done this bill by myself, was that we felt by giving people the opportunity to engage in public hearings and to get public reports and to have a two-way conversation, especially in hot areas prior to the rate making, or at least at a time where they could compare the impact of the bills and understand how those impacts could be mitigated for them in a fair way, that would be helpful. So back to, how do you think we might achieve that goal, knowing that this is a law?
To that point, we have, do you remember the date? We have a public meeting scheduled in
September
Fresno.
22nd.
September 22nd in Fresno to work with the public to walk them through the rate reform issues and to get started that dialogue with the public so they understand when they are getting inserts in their bill that they can reach out to the utility and get additional information, but they can also work with us and get information, and we are going to try to be more proactive in making sure that we are not just saying utilities go take care of this, but we as a commission are putting our energy and staff time into reaching out and working with communities.
Thank you. Commissioner Picker, I asked you what you were doing. This is on the same topic. I just need to get there. Yesterday we talked about transparency, and by the way, first, I'd like to compliment you on having reached out to my district right after your confirmation last time, really working with them on renewables. They were shocked. They had public engagement. The officials had engagement with the commissioner. You listened. So the personal part of your participation in this has been very, very good, and I want to say that straight out and compliment you on that and say that for us in Kern County, that was very important. However, having said that, now I want to talk about the general transparency. So I asked you what you were doing to make the PUC website easier to navigate, a question from last year for regular Californians, and would you like to explain that a bit?
We are in the midst of redesigning our website. It tends to be a little bit oriented towards professional participants at the CPUC, folks who become parties to our proceedings. We recognize that there's a need for them to continue to have information that's sort of in the legalistic framework, but we also know that a lot of other people have questions and want to understand the policy issues that we're facing. So we have to have a website that's easier for them to use. And so we're actually at the point where we're starting to design that. I haven't seen any mock-ups yet. I haven't seen any specific designs yet, but I know that we've embarked on it. It's taken a while to actually get started since I became president. I will say that it's going to be a challenge since we use weird legal notations, and it's very hard even for me as a commissioner to do a web search and to look at the range of docket numbers and make sure that I'm actually getting what it was I asked for. So that means that we'll have to go further than just the website design and start to look at how we actually name things at the PUC. And I think that that's where we'll get some slowdown, because then we have to go and work through the backlog of past dockets as well as the future dockets. But I think we're committed to it. We're starting on it, and I hate to say it, it will take time.
And so do you think there would be any space on the website for people to have interactive conversations, or to be able to access a sample time of use bill in an inland hot area using report information that you got so that they could compare their stuff ahead of time and maybe go on record as to how that mitigation works for them?
I think that's actually a very good suggestion, and it hadn't occurred to me. I'll go back and start to talk to staff about it. But I think that we also know, and I'm sure you know this because we've talked about it, that the utilities themselves aren't very good at working with the public. We can explain it, but that's actually ultimately going to be what people deal with. So we need to be able to test them. And one of the values of the pilot programs is we can actually see whether the utility itself is ready to go. Have they developed time of use products that people actually are interested in? Have they done what SMUD did here and gone out and actually worked with people to figure out how they'll use them so they can constantly improve it? That's how SMUD got widespread approval of their programs. So I'm a little influenced by that as well, as some of the value of the pilot is not simply explaining it, but making sure that the utilities know how to do it in a way that customers feel like they're being honored and they get something of value out of it.
So it's a two-phase. Thank you. So back to I appreciated the letter that I got the day you came to interview regarding
Really sorry
that you hadn't really noticed, or at least the board hadn't really noticed, that I hadn't received a response for quite some time about what was going on with my bill. So I'm forced to ask it in this interview, which is embarrassing me because we all have a lot of time it's taking up, but there we go. If we had been able to clear it with the letter back in June, I wouldn't have to be doing this. But the process you outlined in the letter, while it may address the letter of the law, it still relies on the PUC rate-making process, which, as you just stated, is not advantageous, or we've talked about before, not advantageous to utility customers. And you know, the bill did require the PUC to consider evidence of the hardship of time of use pricing would have on customers in hot areas. So my hope is that you will rethink the answer that I received yesterday, that to me didn't include any public reports, didn't include any public engagement, was much more about data collection, and was done in a process, a rate-making process, which may be a lot confidential, that really can't be shared, and that would help, especially the people in my area who are absolutely still incensed over the meters, and we need to move them all forward. You know, we need to reestablish faith in the CPUC, and that faith needs to be that when new things come, that they are being overseen as something that's safe and beneficial to them, and that they have a way to weigh in. It's not just going to suddenly show up and they have no idea why and how it works or doesn't work, and that there's no public engagement. So with that, could both of you maybe say what you think you could offer in that area? And then I had many, many other questions, but my colleagues have a great handle on the safety questions and some of the other things, and so I'll leave this be. So what do you think might improve the process you've outlined?
Well, first, let me again apologize for my oversight.
I totally understand you have a lot of other things to do there.
It still makes me feel bad. So I think that what I'll take from this is that you would like to see something similar to this initial rate workshop that we're planning to do in Fresno, in Bakersfield, and other parts of your district, where we actually can sit down and talk to people, play out some of the ideas, show some of the experience. So begin that process.
Okay. And continue it throughout. I mean, you know,
once you have the process for new rollouts, I think you know, one of the questions I was spent a lot of time on, but I won't today, was, and we talked a little bit about this, but so what new programs do you believe are within the scope of the CPUC without legislation? But we're going to go to the end instead and say, so if you had a rollout process that people knew what they were getting and they saw the benefits of it, it wouldn't impact us in the legislature quite so much that it wasn't something that we directed. And that would make us all, I think, function in a lot more coordinated way.
Right. Yes, I agree with that. I think traditionally the PUC has just simply said, oh, utilities go communicate, and they are not that great at communicating either. So we need to take more ownership and responsibility for that communication and that engagement, make sure it's ongoing, and things like when our new website gets rolled out, making sure we have a rates, you know, TRU pilot program link so that folks can both get information and provide feedback.